Peter Mbada is a Christian entrepreneur, leader, preacher, and international speaker with a passion of empowering people spiritually, economically, and socially. He's a co-founder and chairman of the BTAG Group, founder and president of Men of Valor and Excellence, MOVE, a Christian men's organization with membership in Africa, United States, Japan, Middle East, and Australia. He sits on boards of different organizations and is a member of the advisory board of the Science First, Africa's largest institution promoting science education in Africa and based in Grahamstown, South Africa. He's a founding member of the Movisi Foundation, registered in the United Kingdom and involved in funding education for the underprivileged kids in Africa. He's an author of 3 books and over 500 articles. Peter Mbada holds a Bachelor's of Science honors in Mechanical Engineering and a Master's degree in Business Leadership, MBL, from the School of Business Leadership, UNISA. He's married to Jacqueline and they have 2 beautiful children, Tehila and Shabak.
What an honorable man we have today in the studio. We are in Botswana, in Africa, right now with Mr. Mbada. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Mr. Peter Mbada. Mr. Peter, thank you so much for your time and for coming to the studio.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for inviting me to the studio, and I'm so honored to be right here.
Wonderful, wonderful. You know, when you accepted to be on the interview, I had a lot of things running through my mind. You know, I mean, I've been seeing you preaching and I know you're an entrepreneur. I know you're a motivational speaker. I honestly didn't know where to start, you know. I didn't, but here is something that came to my mind, that we are living in a world where a lot of people have lost their livelihoods. A lot of people are struggling to make ends meet. And I figured that I think the first perfect question to ask would be, from your experience and, you know, the knowledge you've gotten over the years, how would you suggest one raise capital for them to start up something of their own, or a business, something that can give them income?
I think the starting point is in realizing that indeed, yes, we are in a COVID situation, and we do pray for the families that were affected. And it is unfortunate for the so many lives that have been lost, and it is very important that we may continue to keep safe and also observe the protocols that were set by our health experts. Having said that, I also want to just come straight to what you're talking about, entrepreneurship, even in a season of challenge. What is important for everyone who is listening or is looking at me to understand is that I remember what Rockefeller said. He said, much money is made when there's blood in the streets, which means that when there are problems in themselves present opportunities. And I was talking to my son a couple of weeks back, and he was saying to me, do you know that the billionaires, Bill Gates and the whole lot of them, Elon Musk, etc., their fortune increased by billions during this time of COVID, when other people were losing their jobs and were sinking into poverty. And then I laughed at him and I said, do you know that money is lonely? Because money is lonely, it will tend to move towards where some of it is and move away from where it is not. That is why those that have got the billions, money will flow towards them, whereas those that don't have money will flow away from them. So the only way for you to be able to make money is to understand that money is lonely. And because it is lonely, you need to make sure that you keep some of it with yourself, and then that way it will attract more of it towards you in that way. So even in this time of COVID, there are so many people that have managed to make a lot of money and look at opportunities that have presented themselves, depending on the country that you are in, the city that you are in, or wherever you are in the world. Many opportunities are presenting themselves in the midst of the great challenges that are there. So it is up to us for us to open up our eyes and see what it is that we can be able to do, take advantage of the challenges that we are seeing and experiencing every day, and just make sure that you become part of the solution and not part of the crying. during when the pandemic started and everybody was looking for sanitizers and stuff like that. We also at that time, because the rest of the other businesses had closed down, we moved into making sanitizers for a short period of time because that is what was selling. And so we made money for that period and moved on to something that is much more permanent as we continue to move. So whenever there are challenges, there are also opportunities. We just need to train ourselves to open up our eyes.
Interesting. Thank you so much for that. I read this article from this other gentleman, and he was mentioning something that many people know about. The think big but start small, and it got me thinking that notion to think big and start small. Some people, they say, in a way it kills some people's dreams, because sometimes when you then start small, it kind of creates a picture that you are stuck there. I don't know, maybe it's the way that I was viewing it. Perhaps maybe you can elaborate about that. The principle of starting small, thinking big but starting small. Does it apply to certain kinds of businesses, or there's certain kinds of businesses that principle simply doesn't work?
That is, especially from us, from an African perspective, that is the correct way to do it. Even if you look, I've been reading the stories of most of the African billionaires. And when you look at them, you can talk about the Aliko Dangotes, you can talk about Strive Masiwa and them. And when you look at where they started from, they didn't start as just being these big giants and billionaires and everything working out for them. They all started from somewhere. They started from where they were. They started small and they began to build up from where they were organically. And so the correct way to start a business and the correct way to start the journey is exactly the same way as you have put it across. Think big. That is strategy. That is looking into the long term, but start small. Means start from where exactly you are, because starting small means you don't get overwhelmed by facts, you don't get overwhelmed by situations. You can do things that you can see left, right, and center around you, things that you can control, and the things that are within your a sphere of influence. And from there, you begin to grow and develop organically. For example, if you're looking at eventually in the long run running a global business, you can't start by having a global business when you can't run an office that has got 5 people around you.
Yeah.
You start there. And when you know the ins and outs of business at that level, it's easy to organically grow to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. And when you've got businesses all over the world, in all the continents, and you know the ins and outs of it, it is very easy for you to be able to stand and still be in control of all that. So think big, start small. That is the way to do it, especially for most of us Africans who did not inherit a fortune, but we're starting from the ground. We build block by block. Can I say this to you?
Yeah.
That all development is all progress is developmental. So, which means if you're gonna progress and build a $1 billion empire, it is a progressive process that is developmental. We build block by block, block by block. The skyscrapers that we see, all big and towering in most of the skies in the world, they did not start as a big things that we just dropped in the middle of New York City or something like that, but they were built block by block, brick by brick, until they become skyscrapers. So that is exactly how we build fortunes, how we build big business, how we build empires, brick by brick, block by block, and we move progressively. So think big, start small, start where you are with a vision of the future.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Mbada. Appreciate it. Don't go anywhere. Mr. Peter is still here with us. He's going to explain to us and tell us more. We're going to be talking more about leverage and the power of leverage in the next segment. So don't go anywhere. Sit back, relax. We'll be back shortly after this break. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We still have Mr. Mbada in the studio today, and he is telling us about his experience and his knowledge, wisdom that he has acquired over years in business. Sir, it's still good to have you on the program.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Pleasure, sir.
Before we went on a break, you were just explaining to us here, but I highlighted that I need you to explain to us leverage. Robert Kiyosaki says leverage is power. Some people live in fear of it. Some abuse it. Some use it. When you visited in South Africa, you were speaking at one gathering. I was in the congregation. You said, never ever start a business with a skill that is resident in another person. And I don't know now, there's some form of businesses that a person has to have other people that are skilled in something. In relation to people that are starting businesses, particularly small businesses, what is your advice in terms of starting a business with skills that are not in them? What is your advice in that, to that?
What we always need to remember if you're going to start up a business is that rule number one, the capital is you. You are the capital. Because in most cases, when you are starting up a business, you don't have resources, you don't have money, you don't have many of the things. So which means the best way and the easiest way and the logical starting point is making use of the skill set that you have. So then you build the business around you. Now, I gave an example years back when I was in that forum that you spoke about when we were starting our business, the labs. And when we were starting the labs, initially we wanted to start with medical laboratories, setting up medical laboratories. But we did not have that skill with us because I was starting up with my wife. She's she's a biological scientist. So we're starting from there, and then we want to start a medical lab. Now, for us to get started, we got a resource from outside who was setting up everything, but we did not have enough money to pay them, and we also did not have the skill of what was needed. And so, which means we didn't have the two important things that are needed for us to be able to start the business. And as we began to move, right at the onset, we began to face some hitches. So that is when we learned that rule number one, always begin with a skill that is inside of you. And so we shifted our model at the beginning, and we started with a skill that was resident in my wife, where she was going to be starting up to run the labs for us at that point. And now that we've developed and grown, and now we have managed to amass some resources, which is financial resources, we are then able to set up a business that may not necessarily have the skills that are resident in us, because now we can pay experts that we will employ to be able to do specific things, to employ as technical people, to employ as marketing people, etc., etc. So the starting point is to always understand that rule number one, capital is you. You are the capital when you are starting there. So you may not necessarily need lots of cash. What you simply need is the skill set that you have, and you begin from there. And as the business develops, you can then begin to apply leverage, as you have put it up correctly. We can never be able to grow and develop the business exponentially without using the law of leverage, which means at that point you begin to need to bring in people that have got skills and knowledge that is far and beyond what you have. You can also need to begin to bring in people that will go to places that you cannot be yourself, but you need to have built it up to a place that even if they are in your absence, they can still be able to represent you, represent your values, represent what you stand for, and represent your brand. So for you to be able to get to that point, it means you need to be paying them enough for them to still remain loyal. You need to be able to be taking care of them enough for them to be, even when they are not right in front of you, they can still remain loyal to the brand that they are representing. So we cannot be able to develop the business exponentially without the power of leverage. Whether we leverage financially, which means we can start with the resources that we have, but we are in the end going to need to use the resources from the bank, the resources from other people, so we can leverage. We can make use of other people's finances or the bank's finances for us to be able to have exponential growth. Similarly with skills, when we get to a certain point, we begin to need, like where we are now, we begin to use skills of many other people. We begin to develop businesses that we don't necessarily have all the knowledge, but because we've got the resources now to pay experts, they can begin to develop the business on our behalf as we give them the enabling environment and the resources to move forward.
Okay, thank you. So profound. you're a man of wisdom, truly. I actually wonder how often do you read, and what kind of material do you read? Because sometimes I've heard there's an article of one guy, I forgot his name, but he was saying an average business person reads about, I think, 72 to 85 books per year or something like that. So I've just been wondering, out of curiosity, how many books is an entrepreneur supposed to read for them to at least be average, or I don't know, in terms of acquiring knowledge? How many should one read?
A leader is a reader. We just need to be able to read. There is so much wisdom and knowledge that is hidden in the books. I've seen many people, they want to develop and grow empires, but they cannot even read one book in 6 months. I read quite a lot, not 100 books in a year, but I read like 100 books in 3 months or in 2 months. I just read all the time. At any point in time, I'm reading like 3 books at the same time. And I'm also quite busy. I'm traveling all the time. But what I've had to do is that because I'm driving most of the time, I've downloaded a PDF reader. And I've got lots of soft copy books, and I'm reading the books as I'm traveling all the time. So there's so much wisdom and so much knowledge that is hidden in the books. Most of what I read and what inspires me is autobiographies and biographies of people that have achieved significant things in their lives. I'm stimulated by reading their journeys. I'm stimulated by reading their achievements. I'm stimulated by reading their failures. And out of all that, it's inspirational. It keeps on giving me the edge to be able to move on. And also it makes me realize, because when you read, like I was reading the book written by Barack Obama, and after I'd also read the one that was written by Michelle Obama. And when you read, it's almost like you are talking to them. It's like they are talking to you. So it's like you can get into the secret parts of their lives. You can get into their minds. It's like you communing with them, and you can be able to understand the way they think. And also for those that have become successful, you can actually realize that they are just normal human beings. So I read a lot. I listen to YouTube while I'm traveling. And so reading is just like second nature to me. So I want to encourage everybody who wants to achieve great things in their lives and who want to be successful, be disciplined enough to read. The capacity that you can read is determined by the amount of time that you have and your kind of lifestyle. But whatever it is, read, and read a lot. I spend a lot of time reading.
Wow, thank you so much. Maybe just state, I know there's a lot, but what is that one book that, as I've just mentioned, a book that has made an impact on your life in terms of leadership and in business? Can you just maybe state one book, or perhaps two, that you might recommend, to say, okay, these books, they are life transforming, and then maybe we can encourage the viewers to at least get them and also read?
Well, I've read so many books that sometimes it's not so easy to be able to pinpoint and say this one in specific. But they all have got different thrusts. They depending with what you want to pick up at that point in time. Just like I was just reading, I just finished last week. I was reading Forbes African Billionaires. Which was just talking about the billionaires in Africa and how they managed to amass their wealth. And that was stimulating to me to just see how they applied the principle that we spoke about earlier, thinking big, but starting small. And all that it did is that it just stimulated me to see that it can be done. If they did it, we can also be able to apply exactly the same models and still be able to achieve success as well. I'm reading right now the Happiest Man on Earth. It is a book by a Jewish guy called Eddie Jakubowicz. Eddie survived the Holocaust during the time of Hitler in Germany, and so he's just talking about his story and how he is the happiest man on earth after having been subjected to most of the brutal of the conditions. So it's a different type of book, again, which is stimulating in a completely different way. In between, last week I was reading the other book, The Go-Giver, a book again that was teaching me about entrepreneurship and marketing. And so I just keep on reading. And one of the books I think that made an impression in me is the book called Synchronicity. It's a complicated
Okay.
word, synchronicity. That book made an impression on me because it sort of taught me to say the events of our lives, they all work together to try and move us in the direction of destiny. That things don't just
Yes.
happen. Sometimes the connection that we have, just like you and me are in the studio together today, but we just met that very short time in South Africa, and I forgot about it, and we all went our different
Yeah.
ways, but something brought us back together again. So
Yes. Yes.
synchronicity is a way of just by looking at each other or interacting in a path, bringing us together in a way that we can begin to achieve destiny together.
Yes.
Synchronicity, it touched my life. I
Wow.
read it several years back.
Synchronicity. I like the word. I'm going to look for that book. By the way, like you
Complicated.
heard in the complicated, like you heard viewers on the introduction when we were introducing Mr. Mbada, he's also an author. The books are right there on your screen. Please visit and read for yourself. He is such a powerful and wise man. You all heard it, guys. We're just going to go on a short break, and when we come back, Mr. Mbada is going to tell us about his personal life. He is a married man with a family, and he's also a spiritual man. He's going to tell us all about it shortly after this break.
Close Up Talk Show is proudly brought to you by AD Media in association with the following companies appearing on your screen.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our third and final segment with Mr. Peter Mbada here. He's right here in the studio, sir. It's still good to have you in the studio.
Thank you very much. It's still good to be right here.
Thank you, thank you. I promised the viewers that in the third and final segment, we're going to be talking about your family. We're going to talk about your personal life. Well, you have a lot going on, sir. You sit in board meetings and you have companies. You've opened multiple companies. You also a spiritual leader. You're also a dad. You are a husband, and so much of going on. And how do you manage your time? And you also gave us time to come and speak to us. I really appreciate. How do you manage your time wisely to know how to allocate certain times to everything that is around you?
I call it keeping all the balls in the air at the same time, like a juggler who has got 5, 6, 7 balls, and they have to make sure that all of them are in the air at the same time. And that's exactly what I do here. There's quite a lot happening, as you say. I've got teenagers right here and the wife to take care of. And I've got so much happening around me. But it all, number one and first and foremost, is grace. I think it's just God gives certain abilities and expands you to the point that you are able to handle a lot much more than what is normal. Some years back, when I was doing my master's, I'm a mechanical engineer by profession, and most of my experience is in the mines. And years back, when I was working for a diamond mine as a section engineer, I was actually appointed to a very big plant, which is the biggest diamond processing plant in the world. Processing over 800 million carats, 800,000 carats per month. A huge plant. And when I was put into that plant, it was giving lots of problems. So there were 2 engineers and they were failing to handle the plant. So I was appointed into that plant as a 3rd engineer. By the moment I moved in, it was just before they just had shifted the other engineer, and they were still trying to make arrangements to bring in the 3rd engineer in there. So I sort of moved in like being the 2nd, replacing the one we had just left. And the portion that I was managing immediately began to perform so well. So I was asked to replace again the other engineer. So I was the only one now managing the whole place, which was supposed to be managed by 3 people. Now, it was at that time that I was at the peak of my MBL, Masters in Business Leadership, with UNISA. And that was quite a demanding and power-packed program. So now here I was doing a job for 3 engineers and also doing my Masters in Business Leadership at the same time, apart from handling family and all that. And I think that time, it is the time that I got expanded, because by the time that I succeeded, I managed to run the plant so well, and the limits and the targets that we managed to achieve at that time, even to this day, they've never been able to achieve exactly the same targets again. And I still managed to also pass very well my master's program without any retake or repeats, which was quite a good feat at that stage, because we started 900 of us in class and ended up only less than 100 managed to graduate at the end of the 3-year program, showing how demanding that program was. So at the end of it all, when I talk to people about that master's program, I say what is important for me in that master's program is not the things that I learned, but who I became in that process. Not what I learned, but who I became. It expanded me to the point that I could now, when I finished and graduated, I saw myself having so much excess time in my hands. That is the time when I wrote my very first book, Destined to Succeed, Unstoppable and Unlimitable. And after that, I could just realize that I could do so many things at the same time, to the point that like today, it's almost like second nature for me to be able to have 20 many things happening at the same time. And I feel much more inspired when I've got so many things happening at the same time. And but all this, it requires discipline, it requires focus, and it also requires the people around to be able to understand. Sometimes when I have acquaintances, whether it's friends and colleagues that I interact with outside of working hours, they sometimes cannot understand how I operate, because everything has to fit within certain times. And so sometimes they'll feel frustrated when they can't fit within my time. But
I was just about to ask you that. I was just about to ask you, don't they complain like, Dad, you've been away, meeting, church, this. Don't the teenagers complain,
So the good thing is that the family has been very, very extremely supportive, because they understand exactly my schedule, and then they've learned to be able to work together with me. We do the things together, and so they've learned, and I try and make sure that I give them maximum time. I don't spend a lot of time away. Whenever I've got the time, I make sure that I spend maximum time with them. Work-life balance, it just happens as you go along. There's nothing like a science where you can sit down and say, I'm going to allocate 5 minutes to the family, 5 minutes to work, and 5 minutes to that. It just happens. Sometimes it's busy times. They understand that I spend a lot of time away. Sometimes I'm around and I spend a lot of time with them and kick football with my boy. And we play the VR games on his PlayStation. Or I have coffee with my daughter. We do all those things. We try and make sure that we put time for everything at any point in time. That's right. Yeah, keep the balance as you go. Sometimes you go off balance, you adjust, come back in. Sometimes you fall a little bit, you adjust and you come back in, and you keep going. But above all, it takes discipline.
Then tell us something, just in conclusion. I've seen this other side of you that I always knew you're a Christian, but knowing you to be like that much of a preacher, like, deep into preaching, I didn't know that part of you. And I've been noticing the lives and actually joined in one of your services. And really, I was so impressed. In fact, more than the word impressed, I was so happy to be in the service, so spiritual, so powerful. And can you just tell us maybe the effects of the ministry side of your life, how you've been, how much people have been impacted and have been benefiting from the word that you're preaching and that ministry side of your life?
I've been preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ for many, many years, and I've preached in many different parts of the world, and I continue to do that. And I've preached in Mozambique, I've preached in Malawi, I've preached in the UK, in the US. I've preached virtually almost everywhere. I've gone, and we thank God for the doors that He has opened up in all these different places. I've got a non-denominational organization to equip and to empower men. It's called Men of Valor and Excellence, or MOVE. And we've got a WhatsApp platform, and we sit in there and we encourage each other and we push each other, and we do meet every now and again and have prayer sessions once or twice a year. We have got conferences, which we call Gathering of Kings, where we bring men into the house and we try to make sure that we push each other up to become kings, real leaders, and become effective even in material issues around our lives. And in terms of the preaching, we have been preaching the COVID situation, as I've said, difficult as it has been with the churches closed. It created great opportunities. There are many people in different parts of the world that have been failing to access churches. And also some people in those non-Christian countries like the Arab world who have been yearning to hear the gospel but have not been able to really access the churches. And so I put together people like that, and we've created a Zoom service which has been running now since it's been running now since just when COVID began, beginning of last year, in the first quarter of last year. We've run consistently. We have 3 meetings. Wednesdays, we've got prayer meetings. Saturdays, Bible study. Sunday, we've got services. And we've run consistently and there are people that have never missed a service. Some of them even got positive, COVID positive, and they had pipes and tubes, all over their bodies, but they still would never miss a service, a Zoom service. And so we've been preaching. We have seen miracles, God healing those people there, and the real testimonies, no manipulation of anything, but the people really getting healed and volunteering their testimonies, of health. And we had even one this past weekend was quite in intensive care, on COVID, and we threw prayers and steadfast, seeking the face of the Lord, they got healed. So we've got plenty and several testimonies. So when we saw the impact that the ministry was doing on Zoom, because on Zoom we have got at least 8 different countries that join our services. Every one of our meetings, we've got Namibia, we've got Zimbabwe, we've got South Africa, we have got the UK, we've got Saudi Arabia, we've got, all over a minimum of 8 different countries at any point in time. So when we saw the impact in all these countries, when we saw the impact in these countries, we then moved on to Facebook Live. We then moved on to Facebook Live, and in Facebook Live, we're now reaching even a whole lot much more. And so we have experienced the real testimonies. People come into my inbox, and we've not been soliciting for testimonies. We've not been soliciting for miracles or anything. But what we see is lives impacted, hope restored, people seeing again that they can make it even in the midst of a COVID. And for that, we are grateful unto the Lord, and we give him all the glory.
Wow. Certainly. Thank you so much, Mr. Mbada, for such wonderful work you're doing. When I went through your bio, I saw a lot of things you're doing, the foundation, the people you're helping, and that is quite some good work you're doing. Thank you so much for your time and for being with us in the studio today. It's been a pleasure and an honor to have you here, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. God bless you, and it's been a pleasure also interacting with you on the platform, in the studio.
Thank you. And to our viewers that joined us today, thank you so much for joining in. It's been a pleasure having you. Please tune in next time, same place, AD Media SA YouTube channel. Until we meet again, bye for now.